The Houston Texans. The Houston Texans in this year's NFL draft didn't have a ton of picks. They actually didn't start their draft until the third round. And a lot of that has to be taken into account because of their new franchise quarterback, Deshaun Watson. They got Deshaun Watson last year by making a bold trade and moving up and getting him. And that looked to be the right trade so far. We'll see how he looks in his second year after a knee injury, but all signs point to him being an absolute stud for years to come. So with that being said, the Houston Texans are looking like a team that could potentially make their way back to the playoffs with a healthy Deshaun Watson, a healthy Whitney Merciless, and hopefully a healthy J.J. Watt. They have a very strong front seven and a pass rush. Their secondary still leaves something to be desired, and their offensive line still needs a lot of work. So when coming into the NFL draft, those were certainly the biggest needs, secondary and then offensive line. We look at the draft for the Houston Texans in the third round. I think they were lucky that they got Justin Reed to fall to them, and they were very happy about that. From Stanford, he's a solid playmaking safety, good athlete. I think he'll help this secondary right away. He might even be a starter right away, but I think he'll definitely come in at least as a third guy and just contribute. And I think he could turn into a pretty solid NFL safety. So Justin Reed in the third round addresses the safety position. They brought on Tyrann Mathieu, and I think this also allows flexibility with what they can do with Tyrann Mathieu, whether that's play him a little at slot corner, play him a little at safety, strong safety, whatever it may be. They can do that with Tyrann Mathieu, and they can put Justin Reed out there as well, and they can use a little bit of the three safety look, which they haven't really been able to do just based off skill set and ability at that position. Then you get a Rankin center in the third round who he fits a major need. They definitely need the center, and this is a guy that will contribute, and he'll probably come in, and he was a safety in college. He might be a tackle in the NFL. They're not really sure, but I guess he could play either position. So he could rather come in and play tackle. He could play center. And I think he'll rather start right away, or he'll heavily compete for that job and be the future starter at that position. So I think in the third round, that's a good pick. Then they get another Akins tight end, another pass-catching tight end for Deshaun Watson. Really, they don't have a great guy at that position, and just adding depth to that position isn't a bad thing. Griffin, he's okay, but I mean, they needed another pass catcher at that position. They add another receiver, which, it's fine. I don't think they needed one, but if they felt like that guy was good. I did really like the Duke pick out of Wake Forest. I'm just going to call him Duke. 270, 6'4", good pass rusher, NFL size. I think he can move inside, outside. And this is a multiple defense for the Texans. They do a lot of different looks, a lot of nickel looks. It's a very similar scheme towards like what New England does. They do a lot of different things. They move their pass rushers around a lot. Merciless might line up at outside linebacker, D and middle linebacker. Same thing for Clowney. Watt moves all over the defensive line. So I think with Duke, it's just a matter of, I think he could actually be a really good interior pass rusher in the NFL, and I think that was sort of a need for this team. It just allows more flexibility for their pass rush and just adds more depth for maybe when a J.J. Watt does go down, they have another guy that can step up and give them a little bit of a pass rush there. So not a bad pick. Then they get another Jordan Thomas tight end. So another tight end adding depth to that position, another linebacker, and a corner. If I really had to poke holes into this Houston Texans draft, I would say that they didn't really address the corner position. I understand that they picked up Colvin in free agency, but I also think that the Texans are in a spot at their corner position where they can't really afford to put more money into that position. They have Colvin, they have Kareem Jackson, who's on a big contract. Jonathan Joseph's getting older and probably retiring soon, but they have a lot of money wrapped up into that position, and hopefully they can just get rid of some guys as the future goes on. They added to their offensive line. They added to their safety position. Those are two good things. They could have added another running back maybe. They added definitely to their tight end position. So I felt like this was a solid draft for the picks that were had for the Texans, and I felt like it was like a B-, a B minus for the Texans. A solid draft to fit some needs, but they could have went a couple of different directions. Maybe added a corner, added another offensive lineman in this draft. So I think the Texans did a fairly good job here, but there wasn't a lot to go off of. So the Texans get a B- from me.